good morning, one and all. I, Dr. Chintan Patel, on behalf of Para Institute of Physiotherapy, Para University, welcome Dr. Akil Ali Syed, sir, Director and Dean, Para Institute of Law, for today's session. Dr. Akil Ali Syed has a blend of 27 years of experience in teaching, research, administration, and the practice as an advocate. He has a practice before the High Court of Gujarat and founded law firm. In addition to a master degree in physics and law, he holds the PhD in law from the GNLU on public-private partnerships in legal education. And his deserved profile includes experience of teaching under science, management, arts, and medicine faculties at different universities. Dr. Syed was also associated with the Gujarat National Law University at the Gandhinagar as an associate professor in research. He has conducted 6 research projects and is an expert in Islamic law, especially Muslim family law, in medical law and research, an expert and in methodology. He has 5 books and 18 research papers to his credit, and he is a holder of the prestigious Devang Mehta National Award for Best Professor of Law in 2017 and Best Director in 2020 by Global Research Foundation. Sir, I welcome you once again to enlighten us with your boundless and wide knowledge. Yes, sir. Now over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Chintan. Thank you very much. I am very much delighted to be here with the physiotherapy students after nearly 6 to 8 years. My introduction just missed about this point that I had spent nearly more than a decade, 12 years with the students of physiotherapy as a teacher of biomedical physics. I had been a visiting faculty at B.G. Patel College of Physiotherapy, K.M. Patel Institute of Physiotherapy, Karamsad, Shri Ghantagana Mahavir Physiotherapy College, Godhra, and also Vinayaka Institute of Physiotherapy, and so many places. Today also, the book co-authored by my wife with me, that is Fundamentals of Biomedical Physics, is been prescribed reference book at Sardar Patel University, RK University, and a few more. I do not remember even. Fine. So it again reminds me to be here again with the physiotherapy people and all of their struggle for physically challenged people in their profession. So that is what the relevance I could find for Dr. Chintan has invited me, especially to mark the World Stroke Day. Of course, as a legal point of view also, it is very important to note World Strokes Day because there are several international conventions, particularly on such peoples, which we will see in today's discussion. As a professor of law, before I talk about the particular topic that is a stroke and the policy relevant to that, I would like to brief you about the constitutional provision because as you people do have your own standard books in the field of physiotherapy, like homeopath has organ and the other different fields have their own Bible. We do have our Constitution of India as a Bible, and this Constitution of India ensures for every citizen. When I say every citizen, it includes all the patients also, as well as all the survivor of the stroke also. That is liberty and justice, expression, belief, faith, worship, etc. Equality of status as well as opportunity, right against discrimination. So healthy people and the physically challenged person because of the stroke should not be discriminated at any point of time against the untouchability and even the life and liberty. So every human being has a right to life, and that right to life, Supreme Court of India has clarified, is not about the existence of an animal life. The right to life includes the right to live with dignity. And that is what is the most essential and touchy point of for the stroke survivor, that whatever the life they are living, that life should not be trouble neither for themselves nor for the family members, and even they should not be discriminated, and they should be paid due respect as well as dignity as a human being. So that is what we will be talking today. So I could find out the relevance of this particular part into an Indian constitution. Moving ahead, Constitution of India further talks about that no one be subjected to any disability, liability, restrictions, and para continues in the matter of a very important thing: access to shop, public places, that is any public place like recreation, entertainment, well, ghat, or a road or any place of the things. And if any person, here we address to the stroke survivor, feels a discrimination or are been restricted because of being them to be physically challenged, or with their own limitation are not been paid due respect, they can directly approach to the Supreme Court of India. And that is what is a very important legal provision, that all this which I just narrated are the fundamental rights. And whenever there is a invasion on the fundamental right, any citizen, even in the corner or a nook of a country, can directly approach to the Supreme Court for the restoration of his fundamental right. So with this background, let us enter into the subject, the stroke. Many of the audience, I believe, belong to the medicine faculty. I need not to mention much about the stroke, but what I observed through the literature, that worldwide this cerebrovascular disease are the responsible for nearly 10%, that is 11% death in the world. And particularly in a country like us, India, which are in the middle income countries. We are not low income countries, but at least middle income countries. And it has been observed that nearly 87% of the stroke results into the mortality. So we need to think about this, and there has to be some systematic approach to tackle with this. Moving further, with the world's second largest population, India is witnessing several adverse trends. And you would be knowing as a medical professional, for this particular disease, that is rapid rise in the proportion of the patient with diabetes, with dyslipidemia, and the lack of exercise, which I believe you physiotherapists always insist not only to the patients but also to the different people, including a common man or a citizen. But somewhere these are the issues, these are the limitations about lack of exercise, the recent lifestyle that causes the disease like diabetes, and that further leads to the stroke. So there has to be some policy. So what is that about? When we talk about again India, then for prevention and the treatment of the stroke, we do have lots of challenges. I have just enumerated major four. And of course, there are the other reasons behind this, and there are the other consequences also related to this. So first, let me say high rate of poverty, and poverty is such an evil because of which lots of the other capacity are been restricted for a human being, especially in the rural location. Access to medical care, of course, not only in a rural but also into the urban area. The medical care either is not accessible, or if it is accessible, then it is quite expensive. Suboptimal implementation of primary and secondary cardiovascular preventive strategies. So these strategies are to be implemented properly. Though we do have a very good infrastructure for the health services, but yet we are not able to cater the need of the country because of the large populations. That also includes the lack of organized stroke care network, even in the urban areas. Here, let me share with you, as I mentioned, my connection with physiotherapy college. My connection with stroke patient is that my own elder brother, who is just 5 years elder to me, is suffering because of the stroke. Of course, he survived by grace of Almighty, but since 19 years, last 19 years, he is still bedridden. He cannot speak also, and he's suffering from that hemiplegia. And because of that, since last 19 years, our family is struggling to make him at ease. And we know what are the issues related to the stroke. But of course, as a relative of the patient also, I have observed the lack of organized stroke care network, even in the big city. So what we require is the stroke rehabilitation. Stroke rehabilitation is a process targeted towards the restoration or maintenance of physical, mental, intellectual, and social abilities of an individual affected by stroke. You might have some definition from your medical perspective, but this is what is a definition given by the legal perspective. That when a policy framework look into this issue, then how does it been seen? Stroke rehabilitation is a process targeted towards the restoration or maintenance of physical, mental, intellectual, and social abilities of an individual affected by the source. Moving ahead, stroke rehabilitation enables the stroke survivor to perform his or her duties, daily activities at an optimal functional level. Optimal functional level, not to be a great in those capacity, but optimal functional level, and helps the stroke survivor to participate in his or her social roles as independently as possible. The stroke survivor relearns the skills. It's again the beginning of the new beginning of the life. So stroke survivor has to relearn the skills that are lost or impaired due to the brain damage following the stroke through the rehabilitation. So with this background and understanding about the stroke and the situation, let us move ahead. What are the policies and what are the concern by the policymakers, by the lawyers, by the jurists about this issue? And that is what is international convention, that United Nations Convention on Rights of Persons with Disability. That convention was basically for disabled person, but that also includes the survivor of the stroke. And that is what Article 9 of this international convention, that is UNCRPD. Of course, the India is also one of the signatory to this convention. Usually, all the country are not been bound to sign such international conventions or United Nations conventions. But India, being a democratic country, always prefer the citizen-oriented approach, and in most of such United Nations conventions, the India is the signatory. And here, it's an international obligation for all the states who have signed this convention to take an appropriate measures to ensure to persons with disabilities access on an equal basis with others to physical environment, to transportation, to information and communication, including the other facilities, whatever are related to the for survival in public as a private and the private life in urban as well as in the rural area. The convention further states that this public and private life in urban and rural areas should also make sure that there is no any obstacle or the hurdles or a barrier for the accessibility for such person with disability, whether it is building, road, transportation, or any other indoor or outdoor facility, including school, housing, medical facility, or even a workplace. And you see now also that many of the academic institutions, of course, in our hospitals, this disabled person facilities are been definitely mentioned, mm, including the ramp, a special toilet, and drinking water facility. But now in an academic institutions also you find that these are the one of the mandate uh, for the owner of the institution or the authorities of the such an academic institution. It also includes the information communication and other services, including the electronic communications. Because of this, the UNCRPD also mandates that all the government, it's not only for India, it is for all the signatory countries, more than 150 countries who have signed this convention, to develop, promulgate, and monitor implementation of minimum standards and guidelines for accessibility of facilities and services open or provided to the public. So that is what is one of the mandate. It has 7 mandate to the countries, the respective governments, and India, being a signatory, has already started implementing on this phase wise. The second is to ensure the private entities. So it's not only the government, but also the private entities also has to make compliances to that offers facilities and services which are open or provided to the public, take into account all aspects of accessibility for person with disability. So whether it's a private organization, company, or even a restaurant, then there has to be such these provisions for, as per the international conventions, to provide training for stakeholders on accessibilities issues facing person with disability. So this is a very important aspect where India also has contributed, that is for training for the stakeholders. The fourth is to provide in building and other facilities open to public sending in braille and easy to read or and understand forms. So most of the time, if the person is literate enough, then he or she can read the signboards. If not, then can communicate orally to the nearby person and get the clarification. But such a stroke survivor who cannot even speak in many of the cases properly, then it becomes difficult for that stroke survivor to communicate with the people around him. So if blind is there, then can read through the braille script. But if person is not blind enough, but the cannot read also and cannot speak, so it has to be made all the signboards in such a manner that an ordinary person can also understand those signboards placed on the buildings. It also includes to provide forms of live assistance, intermediaries, including guidelines, readers, and professional science language interpreter to facilitate the accessibility of the building and other facilities. Just I mentioned about them. It also includes to promote other appropriate forms of assistance, support person disabilities to ensure their access to information. One is about the physical access, entering into the building or enjoying the recreational facility. And the second is about the access to information. And the third and the most important access is about the ICT technology. So this also mandates to promote access for person with disability to new information and communication technology. That is what we call ICT, and through the internet. So how India has adopted all this policy, and what are the steps and what are the measures are been taken by India that we will see next. We, from 2002, do have one special campaign, that is Accessible India campaign. In Hindi, we call it Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan. So this Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan is basically initiated in compliance with UNCRPD for that international convention. So it is a nationwide flagship campaign that is to achieve universal accessibility and make every person enable to gain the access with equal opportunity and live independently, participate fully in all aspects of life, including the social life. So major, it has four component: equal opportunity, live independently, participate in all aspect of life, including the marriage and reproduction and all those things, including the rights and the property, and also the inclusiveness in the society. So these are the four major aspect of this nationwide campaign. This campaign also targets to enhance the accessibility of built environment, transport system, and information and communication eco-friendly. That is what in compliance with the United Nations Convention. So it has three basic components, as I mentioned earlier. The Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan, three components are built environment accessibility, transportation system accessibility, information and communication ecosystem accessibility. So these are three major components, and in order to address all these three component, a strategy is been developed, and the strategy, we can call it a policy points, are the 5 points are there. This five-fold strategy includes the leadership endorsement of the campaign. That includes people like neurologist or even a physiotherapist with specialization in neuro specialization, or even the nurses and the second cadre of paramedical services. Second point is about mass awareness. We'll see that how this all are been addressed in Indian policy. Mass awareness, capacity building through workshops. Those are been organized since 2002 across the country. Many of such workshops you would have attended as a student of physiotherapy. Interventions, that is legal framework where the lawyers have the role, or the courts have time to time made the pronouncement for clarifying on the rights of such disabled person or even the stroke survivors. Those interventions are legal framework, technology solutions, and the resource generation, particularly for such people. And all these things, whatever, at least first three item, because for interventions, whether there's a legal framework, it doesn't require much of the financial resource, but technology solution requires funding. For creation of mass awareness to reach the people at large requires the money. And of course, the state has a limited resources, financial resources. So that also includes in the strategy to have a leverage with the corporate sectors, so that their fund under the CSR, you would be knowing, corporate social responsibility, can be inducted, can be induced into such activity of the rehabilitation of the stroke survivors, and for the funding of other programs, either directly or at least in the form of the public private partnership. So public-private partnership is a kind of an arrangement where the state has desired goals and planning and the targets to achieve, and for which a private organization participate into that. It's not necessarily always the corporate only. It could be an NGO also. It can be voluntary organization also. It could be hospital or the academic institute also, which can help the state, that is government, to achieve their targets, and they work on behalf of the government, and government give them the recognition. And that is how with all the resource sharing, the particular target could be achieved through the public private partnership. So that also is one of the important component of accessible India campaign strategy. With this strategy, as I mentioned earlier, and in one of the mandate we saw, the first is about the training program. So the community-based inclusive development, CBID, is a specially designed community program that is drafted with the University of Melbourne, Australia, and Rehabilitation Council of India. So Rehabilitation Council of India conducts the exam also after the successful completion of this program. And as I mentioned, the internationalization of this program is there with an MOU of the Government of India with the Government of Australia. And the Melbourne University has contributed in the design and development of this particular course. It's a 6-month program, rehabilitation program, which has been designed to provide competency-based knowledge. This is very important from the legal point of view also. Competency is kind of a thing where a person need to have his own knowledge and ability to apply mind. Because as a medical professional, you would be knowing that whenever you treat the patient, whenever you deal with the patient, you need to have his consent. Either if you are conducting a research, then you need to have the consent for the research, participation in the research. And if you are treating the patient, then you need to have that consent for the treatment also. What kind of consent? See, in ordinary law, when we talk about the Indian Contract Act, it talks about the capacity of the person to contract. So when we talk about a capacity of a person to contract for a normal human being, we say that if the person is not of insane mind, so if he is in his sanity, he has not got mad, or his mind is okay, or he has not been drunkard, then all these are the conditions where if these are not, then a person knowingly with an understanding gives the consent, then such a contract is valid. And that is what is desired for the patient doctor relationship also, and that is what in medical science we call the informed consent. It's not a merely consent, it has to be an informed consent. So it is again a duty of the doctor to get the consent from the patient, and that to an informed consent. So most of the time for such patient, you need to seek the consent from the relative of the patient. But if your patient is in a position of giving the consent, then you should prefer to have an interaction with the patient, so that if patient knowingly agrees with your treatment, then definitely that body would also respond well, and you will get the desired achievement as an end of the treatment also. So that is to provide competency-based knowledge and skill among these workers to enhance their ability for successfully discharging their duty to serve that those people. These workers will be called Divyang Mitra. So that is what the new terminology we Indians have developed for disabled person, of course, yet the name of that act is the same, right of disabled person, but we do not call them the disabled person, and we know that they are not disabled, rather they are specially challenged uh, people. Either they are specially challenged or differentially abled people. So in that category, the Indian version of such respectful title is Divyang person or Divyang Jan. And the stakeholder who is been trained with the CBID program, then he can he can serve as a Divyang Mitra to particular patient. This CBID course has been co-designed. I already mentioned about that. Let us move ahead. In addition to this particular course, there is an app also, mobile application, and that is Sugamya Bharat app. Of course, it is very recent phenomena. In March 21 only, many of you would be knowing about this. In addition to this Sugamya Bharat app, there is one Divyang Sarathi. Sarathi. Sarathi is a person who drives the chariot, and the person who drives the Divyang, that is Divyang Sarathi, that is the accessible and comprehensive mobile application for easy dissemination of information to Divyangjans. So what kind of information they usually provide? This mobile app aims to empower Divyangjans by providing them easier and convenient access to information, particularly to schemes, scholarship, statutes, institutional support system, uh, and further jobs and other critical informations are being provided to the Divyangjan through this particular app. Another app that is not actually mobile, it's open, it gets open in mobile also, that basically is a for stroke. This is not a government of India's venture. This is a private venture. Care for Stroke is an innovative intervention which could be tested not just for its feasibility and acceptability, but also for its clinical and cost effective through rigorous design, randomized clinical trials. So the doctors and technocrat and lawyers of Parul University also can take up this as one of the startup project, and can design either the mobile app or any kind of such instrument which can help such Divyangjan either for the dissemination of information or to make the Divyang's life easy. And that is what is the tagline of this mobile app, that Care for Stroke is think smart, take control. So that is another app. What does it contains? It has 5 ingredients. Basically, it provides the information about the stroke, so that at least the stroke patient knows how to make how to come out of this situation. And if the person is not yet has suffered the stroke, then one can take the precautionary measures to avoid such unpleasant incidences. For stroke survivors, it also provides the various exercises, home-based exercises, of course, functional skill training. That this app also further provides the details training for preparing oneself for daily living. How can one can overcome, and as I mentioned in one of the earlier slides, how can he relearn the things. It also includes the activities of daily living, engaging in activities of daily living through the mobile app. And also it has assistive devices, that devices to assist the daily living. So it has 5 different content this particular app has. In addition to this app and private venture, we do have one organization at national level, and that is Indian Stroke Association, that is ISA. And this IAS is also been affiliated with World Stroke Organization, that is WSO. And the main objective of ISA, that is Indian Stroke Association, are to undertake scientific research in the area of stroke, to provide research facility for basic and clinical research pertaining to stroke, to promote enhanced quality of care for stroke patient in India through the development of guidelines and designated hospital. So guidelines are also very important, and thereafter to identify the hospital. So that is these 3 are the main objective of the ISA, that is Indian Stroke Association. 2 more are there, and those are to promote education on stroke risk factors and warning sign to the general populations. So it does not only address to the stroke survivor or the people who have suffered the stroke, but also who can be prevented from this incidents, and how can be they saved. That also is the agenda of ISA. Further moving, it also includes to promote, develop, and provide exchange of knowledge as well as technical cooperation between similar research institutes. So that is what one of the challenge we observed, that for the stroke survivor also at district level, at city level, even in the urban area, there is no proper network. So ISA makes an attempt to provide a network among the research institutes also, so that with the synergy, better results can be brought out, and the people, particularly the stroke survivor, can be benefited. With this, now I'll just turn the direction towards the legal provisions. For an education, it provides the free primary education, reservation into higher education for such disabled or differentially able people. In a health sector, the policies and the legal provisions are there to provide them the free medical services and all the measures to raise the level of their nutrition. At social level, they do have right to marriage, procreations, right to inheritance, succession. No one can be just denied their right of succession just because of any of such unpleasant incidents in their life. They can also make will for their property. They can also gift their property. So all those legal provisions are connected with the individual stroke survivor. Moving ahead, especially since such type of patient requires much more nursing care and medical facility, which are quite expensive. So there are special provisions under section 80DD. You would be knowing that 80D is for the insurance policy. Yes, that also is one of the important topic, that insurance now companies are also giving the special protection for such life-threatening disease or critical illness. So this all definitely belongs into critical illness, and depending upon that various insurance company, of course the IRDA has made the same policy, but their implementation by different insurance companies are different, but there are now available critical illness policy. So in normal insurance policy also, one can add a rider of critical illness. And also like Tata AIG and other insurance company also provides the insurance to the survivor of the stroke, because they are also very prone to cardiovascular disease, or even much more other illness due to their effect of the stroke. So those insurance policy and their coverage, their exemptions are been already there in insurance policy or medical policy under 80D. There is a special deduction for such a stroke survivor under 80DD. Their income can be clubbed under section 80V, and not only the stroke survivor, if he or she is earning, but the person to whom this stroke survivor is dependent. So that person who is looking after, who is taking care of the stroke survivor, also gets this additional rebate under section 88B of Income Tax Act. If I talk about the employment, then definitely, as I mentioned earlier, the stroke survivor do have the equal opportunity, and in many of the places they do have the reservation also for the job. So in an all, whatever are the provisions, whatever are the mandates are there in the country, we had a Person with Disabilities Equal Opportunity Protection of Rights and Full Participation Act 1995. Now this act has been repealed. What is the new act? I'll just tell you now. The other act, relevant act, is Mental Health Act 1987. That includes right to be admitted, treated in psychiatric hospital, and anywhere if such person has been found wandering or neglected, then it is a duty of the police to bring that patient to nearest hospital or the civil hospital. Person with the mental illness can have the property, can own the property, and he also has a right to get the legal service and the assistance. The other is about Rehabilitation Council of India Act 1992, as I mentioned about that Melbourne University and CBID program that is under this Rehabilitation Council of India Act, that is right to be served by trained and qualified professionals. So that is why Rehabilitation Council of India has a mandate to train the people. It also guarantees the minimum standard of education, like any council for any academic institution. National Trust for Welfare of Person with Autism, Cerebral Palsy, Mental Retardation, and Multiple Disability Act 1999. That also is specially act for any of this person. So UN declaration I mentioned is just in the brief that they also talk about this rights in correction. Especially, as I mentioned, this earlier act, the 1995 Act, the Person with Disability Equal Opportunity Protection of Rights and Full Participation Act 1995, is been repealed. That I mean to say that it is no longer in an operation, and that has been replaced by Rights of a Person with Disabilities Act, that is RPDA 2016. So this itself is a kind of act which empowers the person with disability. We can add into them the person with the survivor of the stroke. It also makes the provision for the special courts at district level. Of course, High Court and Supreme Court do have the jurisdiction to look into that. Especially the survivor or any person has any grievances, then they can get the special legal service also, and their cases would also be heard in a special court, so that they have the minimum hurdles and troubles during the proceeding of the court, whether it is for their own personal right or right to property or matrimonial or any right to employment, any kind of things. So moreover, it has redefined the definition of disability, and given the exhausted list here, it's not a time to talk about those disability, because this session is particularly for stroke survivor. But I'll just mention here about the list of those disabilities, that is blindness, low vision, leprosy cured person, hearing impairment, deaf or the hard hearing. Locomotor disability might be with the stroke survivor, draftism, intellectual disability, that also a stroke survivor may fall into this category. Mental illness, we understand. Autism spectrum disorder, cerebral palsy may also include into this. Muscular dystrophy, chronic neurologic condition, specific learning disability, multiple sclerosis, speech and language disability, thalassemia, hemophilia, sickle cell disease, multiple disability, including deaf and blindness, including of that. Even the acid attack victim are also been considered, because life after that acid attack becomes very much difficult, and the victim becomes disabled in many aspects. Also the Parkinson's disease. So these are some of the things which have been considered as as a disabled under this particular act, and that is what is the now the umbrella act for treating all the, rather giving the legal provision or legal protection to the disabled person, including the stroke survivor. This all are the legal aspect. These are some of the policies. These are some of the initiatives by the government of India or some private organization. But we, on social front also, we need to look at the issue and the problem in a much positive manner. India is a welfare state where the state, the nation, the government has a duty to take care about the citizens. So it is what the state is doing, and I just mentioned about different initiatives taken by the state. We the people also need to, the society also need to look at the things positively. That is the we Indian with more religious inclination believe everything the creation of God, and we must take this also, though it's an unpleasant incident, a stroke, but we must take it as a desire of a God, that this is what the God wanted, this is what the God has put us in this condition. There should not be any grief or sense of complaint, nor the other healthy people should criticize the victim or a survivor as a sinner that the God has punished. It is not the punishment, right? For punishment, the God has his own justice system. We, the citizens, we, the people, do not have any say into Almighty's functions. We should not underestimate such survivors also. And we must give an opportunity to all other people who are with us, because the whole world, the whole universe has been created for everyone, not for us only. With this note, I just conclude my speech. We do have 10 minutes. If anyone has any questions, we can have some discussion on that. Dr. Chintan.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your views and knowledge with us. Now, I request Dr. Bhavana Garvi, ma'am, our Dean Principal of the Power Institute of Physiotherapy, to give the vote of thanks.
Hello.
Yes, madam.
Yes, yes.
Very good morning, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. And it was really very informative sessions for all the viewers because many a times the government policies are not that much highlighted into many setups where they are going for rehabilitation, and so many higher economical people can avail their own finances, but the lower economical people will be having so much of benefits through this information. And as a physiotherapist, those who are viewing or watching this live, they can pass it on to their patients. So thank you so much for giving insight about the legal aspects about the stroke survivors benefits. Thank you so much on behalf of PIPT, on behalf of every members who are watching this live. We are very thankful to you for such a newer dimensions about stroke survivors rehabilitation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam, once again. Sir, I extend my thanks to Dr. Akil sir for sparing his valuable time and enlightening us. And thank you all the participants for joining us. Have a good day. Thank you so much, sir.